You're getting ready for Thanksgiving week. That also means you're getting ready for week 13 of the fantasy season. It's almost playoff time. Let's get those running backs set in your lineup. Here's who you should start and who you should sit. Here's some guys you can feel good about. These are the must starts at running back for week 13. Saquon Barkley, Devon Achane, Joe Mixon, Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Bijan Robinson, Alvin Kamara, and Breece Hall. Keep in mind, no teams have a bye this week, and we got 3 games on Thursday and a Friday game. You're going to want to make sure you get your lineup set nice and early. You're also going to want to make sure you get your NFL pick'ems on Underdog set and take the one that they're giving you for free on Thursday. It's Jordan Love in that Thanksgiving Day game, just getting a yard. That's right. If you're a new customer on Underdog, you get this free pick. If you haven't tried it yet, just make sure you use code ENDGAME when you check out because you get that free pick and you also get up to $1,000 of bonus cash on your first deposit. Just make sure you're using code ENDGAME when you check out. So the first game of the week, of course, it's the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving Day, and they're going to be hosting the Bears in Detroit. Let's start with the Bears backfield. DeAndre Swift has seen an uptick in usage since they switched to the new offensive coordinator. But man, this is not a great matchup for him.
Not a great matchup for him, and we're still seeing Rashawn Johnson vulture goal line touches and goal line touchdowns. Can't feel great about Swift this week. I think I can only put him in the flex tier.
Agree. Ironic that while the Bears offense has gotten better, his fantasy value has gone down because the receivers are catching passes. He isn't getting as involved as a receiver, and of course that touchdown vulture is really annoying. So Swift, you might not even need him this week with no teams on bye, but you could flex him if you do. And speaking of that vulture, Rashawn Johnson might get you a touchdown, but what else could he get you?
Not much. A couple carries, maybe a catch. This is touchdown or bust, and there's no teams on bye this week. Let's avoid Rashawn Johnson.
Running backs aren't getting hurt. Nobody's missing. You probably don't need him. I will say at least you could flex him. Again, if for some reason you do need somebody, at least he does have touchdown upside. And then while Gibbs continues to be a must start, let's look at David Montgomery. He did leave early in week 12, but he said immediately after the game, he's good to go. He's going to play on Thursday. So assuming that is true and he does play, how good do you feel about him here?
You have to feel pretty good. They're at home. It's the Bears, not a strong run defense. I'm going to say if he plays, David Montgomery is a very, very solid start.
Probably just going to be what he's been all season long. A very solid start. Can't put him higher in the strong start tier because the Bears at least are a decent defense. And Gibbs has looked so good lately, but very solid. Next is going to be the Giants at the Cowboys. 2 backfields that not really sure if you want a part of anymore. So Tyrone Tracy, who knows what could have been if not for that fumble. This is twice in a row he's put the ball on the ground and he was punished for it. So hey, can you even trust him this week?
It's going to be very hard to trust him this week after, like you said, back-to-back fumbles. And it did look like after that fumble in week 12, we saw a lot more Singletary and even a lot more Eric Gray. I mean, that could have been the blowout as well, but you got to worry here a little bit. It's a great matchup against the Cowboys, but I can't say for sure he's the workhorse running back here. I'll say a flex with upside because I'm worried this might not be all Tyrone Tracy this week.
Yeah, last week really should have been a big game for him against that Bucs defense. This week should be, but you need touches, and who knows what's going on. Also, the fact that this Giants offense just looks like a disaster, so he's just a flex, unfortunately. So then the question is, does Devin Singletary get more value, or do you just want no part of this Giants backfield altogether?
He may have more value, but you're risking it here that he doesn't. And again, there's no teams on bye. We have not lost a single running back to injury this year. You should not need Devin Singletary.
If I'm going to go with the Giants RB, it would be Tracy. I'm going to avoid Singletary. Now, Rico Dowdle actually got a surprisingly good amount of touches last week. It's not a bad matchup for him either, but do you feel any better about him?
I think you got to feel pretty good because what we saw last week was the Cowboys actually somehow winning a football game. Now they get the Giants and Tommy DeVito. They might actually win another football game, which means we could actually see a decent amount of Rico Dowdle. Not scared of this Giants run defense. That being said, I can never view Rico Dowdle as anything more than a flex.
Well, this week, I will put him at least to a solid start. Again, now I'm hoping that you guys out there have two running backs who are maybe a little bit better than Rico Dowdle. But if you don't, I think this is a great spot. We saw the Bucs run all over the Giants. This offense is posing no threat whatsoever. Dowdle is looking pretty good for his part. So at least this week, he's a solid start. Now, hopefully this video helps you with all your start-sit decisions, but if you still have questions for start-sit, waiver wire trades, or anything fantasy football related, use the Draft Lane app because that connects you directly with Chris and myself for all your fantasy football needs. Download it for free right now. Then the evening game on Thursday, which looks some of you might be already passed out on food, not watching, but it should be a good one. It's Dolphins and the Packers. Devon Achane, you go with him. Josh Jacobs, at this point, you have to start if you have him. So that leaves Jalen Wright, who I guess is the RB2 in Miami. Is there any upside for him?
No, he's getting a little more involved. I mean, Mostert is not even a thing anymore, but we're talking, 5 to 8 carries here. You're just begging for a touchdown. And again, there's nobody on bye. You don't need Jalen Wright this week. Avoid him.
Agreed. Not startable. He's purely a stash if you're in a deep enough league. And then the Black Friday special game is going to be the silver and black of the Raiders in Arrowhead to take on the Chiefs. Now, it looks like, for the time being, this backfield still belongs to Amir Abdullah, although technically Sincere McCormick was the leading rusher. But I've got to say, Amir Abdullah is probably the one with the most fantasy value. But is it enough to make him even startable?
Barely startable, and only if Alexander Mattison and Zamir White are out again and you're in a PPR league. But even then, again, we don't have any teams on bye. You don't really need Amir Abdullah this week, do you? I'm going to avoid Abdullah.
Well, you shouldn't, but maybe you do. You could flex him just because I feel like he'll do pretty much what he did last week, catch a few passes. He has scored a couple of touchdowns this year. If it's going to happen for the Raiders, it's probably going to be a dump off to Abdullah. So you could flex him if you're desperate. Now, as far as the Chiefs RB room, it's going to be interesting. We did not see Isaiah Pacheco last week. Do you think we see him this week? And if so, would you roll him out there?
I think we see him this week, but no, again, I'm not ready to roll Isaiah Pacheco out yet. Coming off that injury, he's going to be limited here in his snaps. Even in a good matchup against the Raiders, I'm going to avoid Pacheco this week.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to avoid him too because there's so many unknowns here. How much is he going to touch the ball? How effective will he be? You know how the Chiefs are. You do not lean on any one player, and with Pacheco needing him for the playoffs, this team does not really have to care about this week against the Raiders. They can probably win with whoever they have back there, and they do still have Kareem Hunt. So let's sit Pacheco. Then what does that do to Kareem Hunt, who I feel like for 2 straight weeks should have had a big game and didn't?
Yeah, we're seeing Kareem Hunt crash back down to earth hard, how bad this guy is as a running back these days. Even without Pacheco, I could not view Kareem Hunt as anything more than a flex. And even then, it's like a low upside flex.
The matchup isn't terrible, but again, if he can't smash against the Carolina Panthers, what is he going to do here? I feel like he's starting to fade, so let's fade him to a desperation flex. All right, on to Sunday. Let's start with the Chargers at the Falcons. J.K. Dobbins, unfortunately, left Monday night early with a knee injury, and I know we're thinking, here we go again. Now, it's too soon for us to say exactly what the deal is here, but what do we do with J.K. Dobbins if he's good to go?
I think if he's good to go, I have to still consider him a solid start. He gets the bulk of the carries. He catches some passes. He could always score. So if he plays and is good to go, he's a solid start.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, it didn't sound like worst case scenario. It didn't seem too serious, but again, this is J.K. Dobbins. So look, if he's cleared and it's nothing, yeah, solid start. Just put him back in here and forget it happened. Now, if Dobbins does miss at least this week, got to consider Gus Edwards. He did get that 1-yard touchdown in garbage time for whatever it's worth. But look, if there's no Dobbins, does Edwards become a solid start too?
I can't put him up to solid start because I still worry we'll see Hassan Haskins. Maybe we'll see Kimani Vidal activated. So Gus Edwards, touchdown-dependent flex.
Agreed. Touchdown-dependent like always. He doesn't catch passes still. And even though he looked really good his first game back from injury, he's gone back to looking very inefficient. Don't know why. So a flex and mainly only non-PPR leagues. All right, now let's talk Steelers at the Bengals. Najee Harris, is he still the lead back? And is he going to be leading any of your backfields for fantasy?
I think he's still the lead back, but what is really the upside for Najee Harris these days? Even with a touchdown, doesn't really have the biggest of ceilings. You can flex him, but that's about it.
Yeah, you feel like this Bengals offense is still, as disappointed as they are in their losses, they're still going to be airing it out, putting up points. Don't know that the Steelers will really be able to establish the run very well. I mean, Najee kind of feels like a guy who needs a touchdown as well. So, yeah, flex is as high as I can go. So, do you feel any better about Jalen Warren because he does catch passes?
Not really. What does he do? I mean, yeah, he catches some passes, but he's probably not going to score, probably not going to get the goal line run, not going to get a lot of carries. I'm not starting Jalen Warren this week.
He is at least looking a little better as the season goes on. I think he at least gives you a floor, but barely a floor. So I think he's a flex option. Again, this Bengals defense is really bad in the secondary more so than the front line. So he's just a flex. And there's Chase Brown. I mean, the way he's been coming on before the bye, a lot of people feeling like he's a must start. Do you agree?
I think if it was any other year, he would be a must start. But no running backs have gotten hurt. So Chase Brown still, though, I don't even care. I don't care matchup anymore. He's just always going to live in the strong start tier for me. If you have Chase Brown, start Chase Brown.
Yeah, what's crazy, he's getting all of the touches in that backfield. Khalil Herbert, I mean, might as well not exist there. It's all Chase Brown. He's being used as a pass catcher. He's a leading rusher. He's been good. So I don't think the matchup should worry you at all. Very strong start. This week, the Texans going to take on the Jaguars, who are coming off of their bye. Joe Mixon was a little disappointing last week, but you still have to start him. What about Travis Etienne? Seems like he's still the guy in Jacksonville for whatever that's worth.
Still the guy in Jacksonville, but still not the guy I want in my fantasy lineups. I am not starting Travis Etienne.
Nope, I don't care if Lawrence is back or Peterson's still the coach. I'm going to still try to avoid this Jaguars offense, or at the very least the running game. So I'm just going to say no to Etienne. All right, now we got the Cardinals at the Vikings. Let's talk James Conner, another veteran running back. Seems to be slipping a little bit lately, at least in terms of efficiency, but also in carries.
Exactly. Seems like Trey Benson is kind of coming on more, not running the ball as much. He is still being involved in the receiving game, which is keeping his value afloat. But, man, this is a tough matchup here. I don't think he has a ton of upside. I'm dropping James Conner down to just a solid start, and even then it feels risky.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like you can't put him too low, and that receiving work has kept him afloat in terms of fantasy value. But, man, this is not a great spot. The Vikings only give up 3.7 yards per carry, a top 5 rushing defense, and gotta wonder if he's wearing down. So I will say you can start him. He is a solid on the low end start, but one thing that I'm gonna do is take the lower on his underdog pick'ems. 57.5 rushing yards doesn't seem like a lot, but Connor hasn't even come close to that the last 2 weeks. And with this matchup, no, going lower here. You could do the same, or you can take any other pick you like. If you are new to Underdog, don't forget that free pick you get at Jordan Love on Thanksgiving Day. You can combine it with any other pick you like. It doesn't even have to be an NFL pick. They got NBA, NHL, and more. So check out Underdog, and don't forget to use code ENDGAME when you first sign up. So the rookie Trey Benson, does he become more interesting here, or is the matchup just too tough?
Matchup's too tough, and the touches aren't quite there yet for Trey Benson. And again, this is not a heavy bye week. We don't have a lot of injuries. You don't need Trey Benson this week, I hope.
Yeah, if it was a different team on the schedule here, not a road game, maybe. But this week, let's just sit Trey Benson. Now, Aaron Jones coming off a very nice game because he does tend to own the Bears. Will he own the Cardinals this week?
I'm not sure. It's a good matchup. The Cardinals' run defense, nothing to be afraid of, but I do worry still a little bit about Aaron Jones. I know he did get most of the touches last week, but was that because it was the Bears? I don't know. So I'm only going to say Aaron Jones a solid start, but one of the better solid starts.
I think I'm going to go a little bit higher here. I'm going to put him at the low end of the strong start range. He looks good. I mean, when Aaron Jones is healthy and getting touches, he's one of the better running backs in the leagues. I feel like he's at that point right now. If he can do that against the Bears, he could probably do it against this Cardinals defense. So I'll say he should be a strong start here. Next is the Colts and the Patriots in Foxborough. Now, Jonathan Taylor wasn't in the must-start territory this week because he's starting to struggle, and you got to wonder if Anthony Richardson there at quarterback is not a good thing for him as we thought it would be. So what do you do with JT?
I don't know what's going on with JT. I don't really know. I mean, I was trying to look at it and see what's going on, and I can't put my finger on it. He's not scoring. I mean, he hasn't scored a touchdown in 4 straight games, but he also hasn't really had any big rushing games. So I don't know. It would be hard for me to sit Jonathan Taylor. Patriots run defense is not a strong run defense, I still have to consider him a strong start this week.
Yeah, I do too, because the thing is, you can take a look at last week and realize it was the Detroit Lions, one of the really tougher run defenses. They were behind all game. They couldn't just sit back and establish the run. I'm pretty sure they can do that against New England here. So still, even though you regretted it last week, if I have JT, I'm starting him. Now, if you started Ramondre Stevenson last week, you regretted it, and you got to wonder, he lost a lot of touches to Antonio Gibson. Was that just a product of the game script here, or is there something else going on?
I think that was a product of the game script, right? Antonio Gibson got a lot of touches late in that game. I think Ramondre is still the guy here. It's not a bad matchup against the Colts, but what is the upside for Ramondre Stevenson in this offense? I can only say a solid start.
Well, again, defensively, the Colts are not a great run defense, but he's looked a lot less consistent lately. That touchdown upside seems to be disappearing. He's startable, but I'm going to drop him down to the flex tier here because I just feel like there's a lot more running backs out there with more upside. And then we got the Seahawks at the Jets. Say what you want about the Jets offense. Breece Hall should still be a guy you're starting every week. And Kenneth Walker, I feel like should be, but he hasn't had a big game in a while, it seems, too.
Exactly. I just blindly every week say, Kenneth Walker, strong start. Kenneth Walker, strong start. But you know what? I think I have to back off that a little bit. It's just not happening for Kenneth Walker and this running game. He's always capable of those big games, but there's other running backs that are also capable of those big games. So I'm going to put Kenneth Walker in the solid start tier, although he's a very good, one of the highest end solid starts.
I think there's a couple of things going on here. They're passing the ball more, and they're passing the ball pretty effectively here. We've seen a guy like JSN emerge, so they don't need to just sit back and run it with Kenny Walker all the time. That said, I think they'll be able to sit back and run it pretty well against the Jets defense, which is still good, but not great. Better against the pass than the run. I really think this could be a game where Seattle gets out ahead early. So I'm going to slide Kenny Walker up to the strong starts this week. And Zach Charbonnet, still the number 2 running back there. Is there enough opportunity here for fantasy relevance?
No, another guy you need him to score just to feel good that you actually put him in your lineup. You don't need that this week. Avoid Charbonnet.
Yeah, I understand still rostering Charbonnet if you have Walker, but he's purely a handcuff. Don't start him. All right, the Titans at the Commanders. One of these situations will be tricky to navigate, but I feel like it's not the case with the Titans. Man, Tony Pollard, even in a tough matchup, came through big time. Where can you rank him this week?
Well, this is going to be tough because we've seen this year when Tyjae Spears is out, Tony Pollard is a monster. But then when Tyjae Spears plays, he's just kind of okay. I feel like Tyjae Spears is going to play this week because he missed last week with a concussion. So you got to think he's going to clear. So I'm going to say Tony Pollard only a solid start.
Yeah, I think part of the equation here is not only will Spears play, but will the Titans really be able to just establish the run? Commanders have been kind of inconsistent themselves, both offensively and defensively. I think he's still a solid start, so let's just say he's the higher end of the solid start tier. And then Tyjae Spears is active. Do you have any interest?
He runs a lot of routes, which is what really hurts Tony Pollard, and he does get somewhat involved on the ground, but not enough to be startable this week.
No, Spears isn't even one of those guys I'm going to stash if I need some, upside here. If I have Pollard, no, I don't think Spears really needs to be rostered. All right, now Washington, a lot of ifs here. So first of all, Brian Robinson, if he plays, we're going to play him because this is, again, another injury for him, this time an ankle. He left very early in week 12, did not come back. So what do you do with him?
Brian Robinson has been so frustrating with the injuries this year. You never know, is he healthy? Is he going to get his touches? Is he going to get hurt in the game? Is he going to play? It's the Titans. I feel like Brian Robinson is a guy I always want to put in my lineup, but man, I'm getting very frustrated with Brian Robinson. I'm only going to say a flex start this week because I don't even know how healthy he is.
Well, and part of the problem here is if Austin Eckler plays, who's also been out. I mean, if somehow B-Rod plays and Eckler doesn't, I gotta feel pretty good, and I think I would say he's a solid start, but I need to know before Sunday that he is 100% good. And then I mentioned Eckler was out with a concussion in the protocol. We know how this goes. So, Eckler, with or without B-Rob, what's your feeling?
I think Eckler's just going to be a flex either way. I really don't think Eckler is going to play. He was pretty much unconscious on the field. I really doubt he'll play, but you never know, but I'll only say a flex.
Agree, this may not matter, but again, same thing. It's not like a smash spot, so he's a flex option if he's even active. All right, now here's the big question. If both Robinson and Eckler do miss Week 13, I talked about Jeremy McNichols on the waiver wire as a guy to be interested in, but would you start him?
I think you'd have to be pretty desperate. We've seen Chris Rodriguez Jr. get touches. I can't say it's going to be all Jeremy McNichols, but he'll get a decent amount of carries here. He could always score, so flex if you absolutely have to.
I'll say, look, if either Robinson or Eckler play, you can just probably avoid McNichols. He would be a desperation flex in a week where no teams are off. But if both those guys are out, I think he's got to have some value, but don't go more than just a flex, like an RB3 in your typical 12-team league. So if you need him. All right, now we got the Bucs at the Panthers. Bucky Irving went off last week, and now he gets the Panthers' run defense. How high can we be on Bucky?
Very high. I want to put Bucky on the booms again this week, but we just put him on last week and it'd probably be too obvious. He was the lead back here, and he also ran 56% of the routes, had 6 targets. Rachaad White only 1. He's now the pass catching back. I think you got to be very high on Bucky Irving this week. He's a strong start.
Very strong. Borderline must start. Again, I know not everybody runs all over the Panthers, like obviously Kareem Hunt didn't, but still, we've seen how good Bucky Irving has been this year. He's breaking tackles, he's ripping off long runs, and here's the crazy thing. He caught a bunch of passes last week. Did not see that coming. I mean, you have Bucky Irving, you just have to put him in your lineup. Now, last week, Rachaad White also found the end zone. He's also going against this Panthers defense, but do you feel as good about him?
You can't feel as good. I mean, he's losing that pass catching role. That's his bread and butter, but it is a Panthers, so I think you can flex him.
Well, I'll say because of the matchup, and you never know. This backfield has also been a little inconsistent as far as usage. I think he's at least a solid start based on the fact that they should be able to get him a lot of touches. And I really wish we didn't have to talk still about Sean Tucker, who vultured one of those touchdowns last week and for some reason just magically reappeared. Is he going to make another cameo here?
He could, but he did fumble the second time he was going to vulture a touchdown, so we'll have to see if that, affects his role, but he looks like the goal line vulture potentially, so if you're in a non-PPR league and you're just looking for a touchdown or bust flex, I guess you can roll them.
Yeah, someone who was all in on Bucky Irving last week, I would have been straight up mad if he had scored a second touchdown. Thankfully, he didn't. I'm still not starting Sean Tucker because who knows? He could just disappear again this week, and goal line touches are not guaranteed. So I'm just going to avoid and ignore Sean Tucker. Definitely can't ignore Chuba Hubbard. Look, last week was a really tough spot against the Chiefs, and he didn't do great, but he did manage at least to get into the end zone. But now it's a very different scenario.
Yeah, I said last week, I'm just going to consider Chuba Hubbard a strong start every week. He hasn't failed yet. Why would he fail this week against the Bucs? He's a very strong start.
Very, very strong start. Yeah, this week I'll be all in on Chuba Hubbard. And part of the reason is we don't really have to worry too much about Jonathan Brooks. I don't think. Only got, 5 touches last week? Does Jonathan Brooks get more involved this week?
He didn't even get 5 touches. He got 2 touches. He got 5 whopping snaps. I mean, maybe he gets 10 snaps and 4 touches this week. And you can't start Jonathan Brooks.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. 5 snaps. All right, so maybe he'll get more, but you really want to chance it in your fantasy lineup? That's a no. Now, the Rams at the Saints. Again, you might notice someone who's moved out of the must-start territory, and that's Kyren Williams. Look, he did score a touchdown last week, but he hasn't even finished as a top 15 running back for PPR for 4 straight games. How nervous are you?
You got to be a little nervous because what's dried up here is the pass catching. He only has a 5% target share in the last 4 games with Puka and Kupp healthy, so he's not catching passes. But he plays like 90% of the snaps. He gets all the touches in this backfield, and it's the Saints. I'm going to say Kyren Williams still a strong start.
Yeah, I will say if this was a tougher matchup, I might move him down another tier, but I can't. He still always has touchdown upside. He's got the opportunity, so still a strong start. Now, Eagles at the Ravens. Yeah, you got 2 league-winning running backs on either side of there, but don't forget Justice Hill. Just when you thought you could forget about him, he rips off a long touchdown run. But still, does he have enough juice to get you some points in Week 13?
I don't think so. I'm not going to chase that. I mean, man, if you started Justice Hill last week, congrats. You got very, very lucky with a 57-yard touchdown. I'm not chasing that again. I'm not starting Justice Hill.
No, again, he's always just a very desperate flex when there's bye weeks, and there's none this week. So let's just say no. 49ers at the Bills this week. Wow. Christian McCaffrey. Gonna have to actually have a conversation here about him. You can't just set and forget CMC anymore.
It depends. If Brock Purdy plays, I'm firing up CMC, no questions asked. But if we see Brandon Allen again, because look, I know Brock Purdy threw early in the week, and I know Kyle Shanahan is saying he expects him to play, but he said that last week too, and we know how that ended. And, Shanahan hasn't always been upfront with the injuries. I mean, just see what happened with CMC earlier this year. So if it's Brock Purdy, CMC is a no doubt must start. If it's Brandon Allen, oh man, I mean, it's the Bills. It's a good run defense, but it's not a good matchup overall for the offense. I'll say only a solid start this week if it's Brandon Allen.
Maybe not even. This is a road game against Buffalo. What happened with CMC last week when he totaled 68 scrimmage yards and didn't score and basically didn't help anybody in fantasy is the game got away from them and they couldn't run the ball. Well, guess what? Against Buffalo with Brandon Allen, yeah, it could happen again. That said, he gets you something even if Purdy is out. So I think the worst case scenario, he's a flex if Purdy doesn't play. Purdy does play. It's still a strong start. And the Bills have James Cook, who's up to 10 touchdowns on the season. Home game against the Niners. What do you think?
This doesn't even scare me. I mean, we don't know about Nick Bosa yet. If Nick Bosa's out, this defense is not nearly the same. But even with Nick Bosa, how scary is this run defense? I think this week, James Cook at home is a strong start.
I think, this also kind of depends on the Purdy situation. If it's Brandon Allen at quarterback for San Francisco, Buffalo will just be able to sit back and run the ball all game long. So, yeah, I think he's a strong start with no Purdy. If not, then I'm probably more just a solid start. And the week's going to end with the Browns at the Broncos in Mile High. Let's talk Nick Chubb coming off a 2-touchdown game. Are you any higher on him than you were before?
No, I know a lot of people are going to be because they're just going to see those 2 touchdowns in the snow, but he was still horrible on the ground. What are you, like 59 yards on 18 carries or something? Broncos are a good run defense. Like, Chubb could always score, but I can't say anything more than a touchdown-dependent flex.
Exactly. Touchdowns are the great equalizer here. He's not been good as a runner. So, look, in a non-PPR league, okay, maybe he's solid because he could score, but in half or full PPR, just a flex. And now, thank you, Sean Payton. We're just going to have to talk about all 3 Broncos running backs for whatever that's worth. He's just going to mix and match on a weekly basis, I guess. So, this week, is it Javonte Williams?
I don't know. I mean, the good news is, yeah, we have to talk about all 3 running backs, but I'm going to say hard pass to all 3. So hard pass to Javonte Williams.
All right. I'm on the exact same page as you. Javonte Williams is a big no. I mean, Jaleel McLaughlin did lead the team in rushing last week.
Hard pass.
And then Audric Estime, yeah, at this point, I think we can drop him, right?
Yeah, definite hard pass.
All right, that's the deal for running backs. And we got you covered for start set at every position, along with everything else you need to win. Check out the Week 13 playlist.